If I could build my landscape photography dream lens, that lens would be supremely versatile with focal lengths ranging from standard to super telephoto. It would be light, compact, and of course, super sharp. Well, interestingly enough, Tamron claims to have created just such a lens with the 50-300, a super unique super telephoto compact option from Tamron that they have released just this summer 2024. On paper, this lens sounds perfect. You can see that from the size, it's very compact and it actually feels lighter on the camera than it even looks. So it is a supremely light, compact package for taking anywhere. I think that's kind of the idea, is that this is a telephoto lens you can really take anywhere. And Tamron claims that it has kind of maintained the image quality of some of its brighter and maybe even larger lenses. So that's really what I have been looking for over the last month, is like, sure, it is small and compact, but does it hold up for image quality, for high quality, printable, super sharp landscape images? Or is it more just an option that you might throw in your bag if you need a super light kit and want a telephoto? Like, does it hold up to some of the other options for Sony? Unfortunately, even though Tamron is a third-party lens manufacturer, this lens is only available for Sony. They also make some lenses for Nikon. I hope this lens is coming from Nikon because it would be a fantastic lens for that lineup as well. In this video, we're going to be looking at build quality, we're going to be looking at image quality, and we're also going to be looking at some of the issues that have come up with me over the last month with this lens. So let's jump into this review of the Tamron 50-300 f 4.5 to 6.3. All right, so let's talk about build quality. I owned the very first, or one of the very first, Tamron lenses that they made for Sony, and that was the 28-75 2.8. I loved that lens. I hated the build quality. It just, like, I feel like I took it out just a few times and it looked like I really beat it up. There was kind of scratches. It was easy to scratch. It was fingerprints all over it, and it just kind of felt cheap. This lens is better than that lens, is what I'm gonna say. Tamron has definitely worked to make the build quality a little higher. However, it's not up to G Master. If you have held a G Master lens or used a G Master lens on a Sony camera, it's not there. It's not the same. That being said, it's very acceptable build quality. It doesn't feel super cheap. It, like I said, kind of feels like in between those early Tamron lenses and the G and the G Master Sony lenses. That being said, design-wise, it's phenomenal. The size and the weight and the balance is fantastic. It's a lens I could just use all the time. It fits comfortably in your hand. It sits on this A7R5. It balances well. It's got a nice weight to it. It's got that same 67mm filter thread that Tamron puts on as many of their lenses as they can. It has a locking switch right here. If you have it attached to your backpack, it won't come out on you all the time, which is great. It has a single multifunction button that you set in the camera. You can also set it via Tamron's app, which you can connect to via USB-C, which there's a weather-sealed USB-C port down here on the side of the lens. So overall, on build quality, I would say design, size, and weight, it gets an 8.5 out of 10. Like, it's phenomenal. And build quality and feel, I would say, you know, maybe a 6 out of 10. So, you know, very solid. So this is a situation where you really get to see how versatile a lens like this can be. So the 70-300 is a lens that is in a lot of lineups. Tamron even made one, still maybe makes one. There's a Sony, there's, you know, Canon and Nikon have made them for years. So that 70-300, this lens takes that and makes it just a little bit wider. And right here, I'm gonna actually show you roughly the difference between 70 and 50. So if I just do a straight up shot, right? Looking down at this lake, here is 50. And then here is 70. So I am able, at 50 millimeters, I'm able to get the entire lake in the frame and get a little bit of the mountain around it. At 70, even though it's just 20 millimeters, it is zoomed in a little bit more. It's kind of more of a composition around this mountain right here. And at panorama, so I'm gonna do a panorama of each. So here's a panorama at 50. And here's one at 70. Okay, so you can see I'm able to get a lot more in the frame if I want to at 50. I actually think that I'm gonna like the 70 panorama a little bit more. So we've talked about the wide end there, the versatility at the wide end, but standing right where I'm at, I can zoom in on this right here, this rock formation right here, and capture this image. I can zoom in on that peak over there. I'm not sure exactly what we're looking at. So I'm able to capture quite a few different compositions with this lens, super small and super light. I know you guys are looking forward to seeing how sharp this lens is and the image quality, but I feel like it's my responsibility to cover the cons, some of the issues I've had with this lens before I do that section, because if you just saw the image quality section, you might go and buy this lens before you actually looked at some of the cons with this lens. So as I mentioned at the top of the video, you know, this is a lot of ways a landscape photographer's dream lens. It's small, it's light, it's sharp, as we're going to get to in the image quality section. But the compromise that Tamron had to make in order to basically have this lens be in existence is that it is slow, 4.5 to 6.3. Now, I know what you're thinking, like, Kemper, haven't you shot with a lot of 4.5 to 6.3 lenses before, such as like 100 to 400s, which are like, well, they're normally 5.6, so they're that like half a stop faster. I have shot like with the Canon 100 to 500, which goes to, I believe, 7.1, so it's even slower. But all of those lenses have a bigger, better stabilization system than this lens does. So, and that to me is kind of the weird thing about this lens, is that for a lens that is so comfortable and small to shoot handheld, you have to have a fairly fast shutter speed. The stabilization is, I mean, it helps. Like, I shot a video, and I'll throw up a clip right now of a video with it on and then versus it off, but it's just not that great. And I have found, as I shot, you know, with it more and more over the last month, that like really the inverse shutter rule, so like if I'm at 300, it needs to be at least 1/300th of a second, definitely applies. Which just means that this lens is at its best on a tripod. And like that's it's kind of funny because it's, it's such a portable, compact lens. Now, obviously, you can raise the ISO, you can raise, there's things you can do, but the stabilization with the lens has been, like, honestly, the biggest issue. It's just not that fast. So, you're going to want to either raise the ISO or lower the shutter speed, which just causes problems with it's kind of a weird juxtaposition with its ultra compact size and weight. So that's really the con. And unfortunately, it's kind of a pretty big one. If I really wanted to use this lens at sunset or sunrise, I'd probably want a tripod, which maybe I would want a lens for, spoiler alert, for the size and the versatility, it's very sharp, but there are sharper lenses out there, and it might be, if I'm gonna haul a tripod, I might as well have that bigger, sharper lens. So that's gonna be kind of the big cons that I've run into with this lens. And that's gonna compound even more if you're doing other things with this lens, such as wildlife, such as video, where the stabilization, you want that fast shutter speed, but you're already at a faster shutter speed with the wildlife. You're just going to be raising the ISO even that higher with that slow aperture. So that's the compromise. I'm glad it has stabilization in it, but it's just not that great. Okay, so here's a selection of images. Now, all the images that you're going to be looking at today are raw, unedited, straight out of camera images. I'm going to do a gallery of some edited images at the end of this segment, but for now, we're just going to look at some raw, unedited photos, straight out of camera, so to speak. And here we have an image that's at 55 millimeters, 1/800 of a second, f6.3. And let's go ahead and zoom in. And you can see amazing sharpness. This is a fantastic image, corner to corner. Looking at the image down here in the corner, I'm gonna just pan across the image here, and you can see amazing sharpness on this image. Here is a panorama image, a panoramic taken and 81 millimeters, 1/640th of a second, f6.3. So again, really good sharpness. So a trend that you're going to notice is that this lens, as far as sharpness goes, it decreases as you zoom out. So sharpest seems like about 50 to 70 millimeters is about sharpness. Then as you zoom out to 300, it decreases in sharpness, but as you can see here, this is a 300 mil image. So we have this rainbow going through the scene here. You can see we had these rainbows, and this is just a zoom. Excuse me. This is just zoomed in on this rainbow. And so let's zoom in top of the mountain. This is at 300 millimeters. Very good sharpness. This is really, really good. And this is at 1/1000th of a second, f6.3, ISO 100. So here's a panorama of that image at 128 millimeters. We can zoom in up here. Oh, amazing sharpness. That really looks great. So some of these are kind of more in the middle of the range. 161, almost right in the middle. Yeah, I would say this is amazing. Good sharpness, good color too. For an unedited image, this is a great starting place, and I feel like the color rendition is really good. Here is another 300 mil taken from the top of, I believe, California Pass down in the San Juans of Uncompahgre. And yeah, there's some atmospheric distortion, but overall I feel like it holds detail really well. And contrast, micro contrast. I particularly noticed the micro contrast in this first image at 50 mil is just really good micro contrast. So now I want to show you an example of the range that you get from 50 to 300. And here's a shot at 50. Go ahead and zoom in. Looks really nice. This is Taylor Reservoir off of Cottonwood Pass. Boom, that's 300. So bounce back and forth again. 50, 300 in one lens. And yeah, this one at 300 again, some atmospheric haze, but really holds the detail quite well. So now I wanted to take a series of images in a landscape context, and I think it's important to do it in a landscape context so you can really see not just of a test chart, but are you getting a usable difference in sharpness between focal lengths and at different apertures. So we're going to start out here at 50. We're going to kind of move through the aperture range and the focal range so you can kind of see how the image sharpens and sharpens at, if it sharpens up at different apertures and different focal lengths. So this is 50. We'll zoom in on this mountain and you can see 50 wide open at 4.5 is really good sharpness. And it holds it clear into the corners quite well. These rocks down here are very sharp. The mid-frame edge is very sharp, and this is wide open at 4.5. So if we zoom back into the middle, now we'll just compare in the middle as we go down the focal range. Here is 50 at 5.6. So I can't say that I feel like the light was shifting really quickly. So that's why we have the little light change, because I really took it just a matter of seconds after, but it was kind of the lighting was changing very rapidly. I can't say that I see a significant difference in sharpness. Here's 50 at f8. Again, I mean, let's just kind of pan across the image. It's super sharp, but I wouldn't say it's that much sharper than 4.5. And then finally, f11. And I'm feeling like there's a little bit of diffraction. I think diffraction has kicked in a little bit here on the A7R5 at f11. So at 50 millimeters from 4.5 to f8, so wide open to f8, I'm not noticing a significant sharpness improvement or drop off. So now let's zoom in a little bit to 100 millimeters. So a little bit further, it's 99, but 100, basically 100 millimeters. And this is wide open at 5.6. So by the time you get to 100, you're already at 5.6. And that's that variable aperture that you're kind of dealing with, and really good sharpness. I'm actually thinking, I said earlier that I feel like it's sharpest at wide, like all the way zoomed out at 50, but 100, this looks very, very close. And again, that's definitely solid down in the corner. I'm curious to see if the corners sharpen up at all at f8, right? So we stop down, and I don't see a lot of center sharpness difference, and I don't notice a lot of corner sharpness difference either. And I'm guessing f11, we're gonna be seeing that diffraction. Yeah, so just a little tiny bit of diffraction at f. This is actually f10. I actually did it wrong. It's f10 for 100 mils, so that's too bad. But corner, pretty much the same. So far in our focal range and apertures, very even image quality across the focal range and the apertures. But let's bump into 200-ish here. So 197, it's hard to get it actually on the nose, but 197, and this is wide open at 6.3. So by 200, you are at 6.3, but you are also enjoying absolutely amazing sharpness for, I don't know what else to say. Really good sharpness. Now 200, our corners are dropping off a little bit. You can see down in the corner here, we've dropped off on sharpness a little bit. Let's see if stopping down to f8, center, I'm noticing at 200, f8 is even that little bit more biting sharpness. So it might be worth a drop down to f8 for a little more sharpness once you get to 200. And the corner, it looks pretty much the same. I wouldn't say you're getting much sharpness. And then let's look at f11 here. Definitely some diffraction at f11 on the A7R5. So that's good to note. And now the all-important 300 mil. We start out at f6.3, that's wide open. And very nice sharpness. There's a big drop off though between 200 and 300 on sharpness. Like these rocks here, they're really sharp. I don't know how the YouTube compression is showing. They're really sharp, but this is just really sharp. That being said, this is going to be sharper than cropping into 200. So having that 300 there is really versatile. So this is 300 wide open. Let's see 300 at f8. Maybe slightly sharper. I would say the corners are about the same as at 200. So you're not losing a lot with the corners. And then f11 here. Yeah, definitely diffraction kicking in, the least sharp of any of the apertures. What can we take from these sample images? Well, they are just one set of my sample images at a mountain that was about maybe a half mile, quarter mile away. So there's some distance, which I think is important. With a telephoto lens, you are typically doing landscapes at a distance. So I think that's good. What's the big takeaway? There's not a big reason to shoot this lens top down at all. I think in theory, you might get a slight sharpness improvement at 200 millimeter and 300 millimeter, but I don't think it's enough to deal with the loss of light. And at 50 and 100, they're literally what I could not see a difference in the aperture. So shooting wide open on this lens is probably actually very advisable, because then you can have your ISO as low as possible and your shutter speed as high as possible, which helps, as I talked about in that con. So now, a feature of this lens is that it has very close focusing. And I took some pictures of some wildflowers. This is a straight out of camera raw file, and it has amazing pop and color. Tamron is doing, and look at the sharpness here. This is at 88 millimeters, f6.3, ISO 250. Phenomenal sharpness here. Here's another one. So that's another real advantage of this lens. Look how sharp that is. That's incredible. That's another real advantage of this lens, is that it also kind of doubles as a macro. So here's my little wildlife moment, as you may have seen. This is 300 millimeter, 1/400th of a second, ISO 250, and there's his eye, very sharp. Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot of wildlife photography. It was just kind of a coincidence that this yellow-bellied marmot was there when we were shooting. So yeah, and these are just a couple of the images that I was shooting in the field. We can talk about them a little bit more. This is 50, the difference between 50 and 70. So if you get this lens versus a 70 to 300, so this is 50 millimeters, this is 70 or 69. Yeah, that is a significant difference. You are getting way more in the frame at 50 than you are at 70. And that's again, coming back to that versatility that you're getting with this lens is absolutely incredible. And here's panoramas, those panoramas that I took. Here's a panorama at 50. Here's a panorama at 70. Like, you can get more in the frame at 50. So now we're going to talk about what I was talking about with the kind of downside of this lens, and that's the stabilization issue. This is clear out at 300 millimeters at 1/400th of a second. I should be following the inverse shutter rule here. I mean, it is pretty much, it's even a little faster, right, than the inverse shutter rule. So I have 3 images here, and you can see this image is not sharp. It's not out of focus. This is a stabilization issue. Second image, a little bit sharper. but it's a little bit better, but still I wouldn't call it biting sharp. And then here on the third try, I was able to get it sharp. And that is the unfortunate thing about this lens, is it's so small and light and versatile and inexpensive that it's the stabilization, and it was a trade-off that Tamron made. And like, I understand, and I'm sure it's working in conjunction with the in-body image stabilization. Interestingly enough, you can't actually turn the stabilization off on the lens separately from the camera body stabilization. They're coupled in the menus of the camera. And that just indicates to me that this really is kind of a lightweight stabilization system, and you definitely feel it. Some of those images that I was showing earlier that were at 300 that were super sharp, like this one, 1/640th of a second, right? So we're doubling up on the shutter speed. Let me see. This one, 1/1000th of a second, right? So really getting a fast shutter speed, and I'm able to get the most out of the sharpness. But the truth is that this lens is most at home on a tripod because of that stabilization issue. Like, obviously you can raise your ISO, you can, brace yourself or kind of learn how to shoot at the slowest maximum shutter speed. But like, I can tell you from experience that using a bigger, more substantial telephoto lens gives you lower handheld shutter speeds. The lens itself is heavier in your hand, so there's a little more stabilization there, and they tend to have very sophisticated stabilization thing. Those are bigger and heavier lenses though, so they're not as portable, but they're more usable handheld. So I don't want to harp on it too much, but I do think it's really a factor. These last three images are a little bit of a cautionary tale to make sure you're checking that things are in focus and sharp while you're in the field, because I took 3, and part of that was because I could see that these first 2 weren't sharp, and then I really, on the last one, like slowed down, held my breath, and like was able to squeeze it off. And that's kind of the trade-off that you're making with this lens. But all that being said, this lens is definitely batting out of its league for image quality and sharpness and color rendition and all of that. I think there's no way you're not going to be pleased with some of the results you're getting. When I was starting out landscape photography, like 13, almost 14 years ago now, a lens like that, a lens like this could exist, would have absolutely blown my mind. The size and weight, the image quality, the price, something we haven't really talked about, but this lens is just under $800, so it's under $1,000 for this lens, which is just phenomenal value for what you're getting. It really just is a package that is right now not really being is kind of an up and coming segment of the industry that I'm really excited about. And like I did mention in the cons section, the image stabilization leaves something to be desired, and it is a slow lens. I have it on my tripod here, shooting sunset up here on Independence Pass. But even still, all the way around, this lens is an incredible value. It gets a huge recommendation from me. I'm excited to see what especially some of these third-party lens manufacturers have in store for the industry, because they're gonna not just push the limit of what they're able to do, but they're gonna push what the actual camera companies are doing. A lens like this from Sony or Canon or Nikon would be even that another level, right? Okay, that wraps up this review of the Tamron 50-300. So this channel has been quiet over the last 6 months. We have been doing a lot of work with our production company. We have been driving supercars, we have been filming $1 million houses, and we have even been interviewing politicians over the last 6 months. So we have been extremely busy, but we are back at it with this YouTube channel. This YouTube channel is now fully dedicated to landscape photography. It's called my name, Kemper. You may have seen that it changed from Summit to Kemper. So yeah, this channel is all going to be all about landscape photography. We have some really cool projects in the works. I'm so excited about some of the stuff we have in the works. If you subscribe to this channel and you're more of a general photography type of person, or you just like cameras, we have started an all new channel called Camera Nerds. And it is what the name is. It is all about nerding out over cameras. We're going to be doing podcast style shows over there. We're going to be doing live shows. We're going to be doing deep dives on all kinds of stuff. Toby's got a film project, an actual film project in the works. So please subscribe over to that channel if that's kind of if you subscribe to this channel looking for that. And I hope that you subscribe to both, because I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff on both. So with that, we'll see you on the next adventure.